Welcome back to another episode of the Skits and Giggles podcast. With this one, we continue our project to create something positive out of Bryson's injury. In the first installment of that mission with Dave Spielmann, we talked about recovering and coming back from injury. In that conversation, Dave also nominated Arno Galmarini for a follow-up on injury prevention, and that's just what we did for this one. As a coach, Arno has seen it all, from helping elite athletes across many disciplines in mountain biking and other sports, working towards peak performance, to coaching more recreational athletes through his Quest platform towards general health in life and longevity in the sport. And with his Origym, Arno also runs his own facility in Squall in the Engadine Valley, catering to the same health, performance and longevity mantra. We take a deep dive into the simple strategies that every rider can implement in a routine apart from just riding a bike a lot. In summary, a bit of strength, a bit of mobility, and a bit of flexibility go a long way in not only helping you to avoid injuries, but also adding longevity to your riding. For more information about this episode and the Skits and Giggles podcast, you can just follow the links in the description. To support the podcast, please share this episode with your riding buddies, or just leave us a 5-star rating on your favorite platform. That's it, that's all, Skigglers, and here's our chat with Arno Galmarini. Welcome to the Skits and Giggles podcast, Arno Galmarini. How are you today?
I'm doing great, thanks. We had already some chat, so I'm pretty warmed up and I'm looking forward to the talk now.
Very good. Bryson, how are you doing?
Also warmed up. Actually, it was really nice to have a friendly chat beforehand. It's cool to meet new people and get their story. And yeah, I'm looking forward to diving deeper for Arno. How are you doing, Pascal?
I'm doing great. Really looking to this one. I still hope I have some words left after our warm-up chat. But today we are looking to continue our journey to document the recovery of Bryson's double fib fracture. And we also, we wanted to create something positive out of the painful experience and also have something that is useful for our listeners. And today we sit down with Arno because Dave Spielmann, our dear friend, has nominated him for a chat about injury prevention. And so if you haven't listened to the episode with Dave Spielmann, that's number 78 in our archive. And we go into different strategies and ideas in terms of recovery from injury and how to come back stronger. And I think today fits in nicely on that journey. Actually thinking about how we can prevent injury from happening in the first place. So that's the context for today. And I think we just jump straight in. Arno, when you hear injury prevention, what are you thinking about?
Actually, quite a lot. Because there are a lot of puzzle pieces that goes into injury prevention. Usually, you look at all the motor skills you have, whether it be coordination, whether it be strength, whether it be flexibility, etc. And you also look at, so usually when I work with a person, first I want to find out where their weaknesses are and find the personal limiter as well. So for example, physiologically as well, the personal limiter. There are different options to do that, and just doing a general movement screen really helps you to find out where the weakest links are and to work on them. And then I think the general movement screen is pretty good to start with, but you actually get to know the person better after you work with them for quite a while. I think then you get the bigger picture and also how the person deals with different situations. I think that's pretty crucial.
Okay, and when you say work, I think we can qualify if you mean work. You actually do work as a coach and you work with athletes specifically, amongst other things, to prevent injury, to make them stronger, to make them better performing athletes, correct?
Yeah, absolutely, yes. I've been doing this Since 2010, so quite a while. It's my full-time job since then, and along the line, I did quite a few things, including owned a performance gym in Zurich. So it was called Elite Training. My company still is called Elite Training, and especially in Zurich, I had a lot of athletes coming through the door. We worked with teams. We worked with the Saddle Lions. We worked with skiers. We worked with the Swiss ice hockey team, and then it progressed into mountain biking as well because of my personal interest in mountain biking. And now I'm not just focusing on athletes anymore so much. Still do some athletes, but usually, if we work together, it needs to be we have to have a good relationship. Like he needs to be interested in working with me, and the same vice versa. And what I'm also interested is in, like you talked before, Pascal, that when I see a lot of mountain bikers, they get to 40, they get to 50, and they're so much into mountain biking, and they want to continue their adventure, but they suddenly feel or have some injuries, or they feel like I cannot keep up anymore, or life interferes, and I help them just to not to say to get back on track, but to actually get them fitter and thinking in terms of longevity as well. Because when you look at athletes, of course you wanna. Longevity is a big aspect, but also you want to get them on a really high level the fastest way possible as well. Also, of course, you need to have it sustainable, not just a short career, but still, it's a little bit a different approach than like if you were thinking of doing big mountain biking tours when you're 60 years old. So you have kind of a different approach there. But because of working in high performance sport, I would say working with average persons or like average Joes and Janes is different, but also in some cases easier, because the athletes, they usually have like way more.
Well, the high performing athlete is a fickle little animal.
Exactly.
It's very fragile sometimes. Not necessarily in terms of their body, but it's just that the entire personality, right? So there's, especially when you get to the very, very top of performance, there, certainly the mental. There's like the things that people think about and what they attach their high performance to, right? So it becomes very interesting, and it's not actually about the training or about the strength conditioning or whatever it is. It's about making sure the boxes are ticked, or I need my special blanket and all that.
That's a really good point, and their whole identity is attached to that as well. Like they put themselves under so much more pressure because everything depends on it. And there is sometimes some heated situations that I had that occurred with different personalities, of course, as well.
You say you're a personal interest in mountain biking. What is that something that was with you from early on, or is that how did you find the bike and the trails?
Actually, I mean, I was lucky enough that I grew up in a very sportive family, and mountain biking was always part of it. But back in the day, you couldn't call it like trail riding or like anything like enduro or downhill. It was more like I would say cross country. And I remember when I was here in the Engadine Valley, when I went to school, I had to always go up with my bike from Ardèche. It's still 8 kilometers up the hill all year round. And that's where my interest began. And I always loved to go down on smaller paths. But then when I was finished with school, I would go studying in Zurich, and I completely lost the mountain biking. It was not on my radar anymore. I went really into strength and conditioning and everything. I worked out a lot for myself. Was a power lifter for a while.
Oh, wow.
So it interfered a bit with the mountain biking would have interfered a bit. But then I remember my brother, he was a professional snowboarder and he was
Olympian.
sponsored. Yeah, Olympian, yeah, exactly.
Nevin Galmarini, for people that don't know. Also a mountain biker.
Yeah, totally, yeah.
I met him at the Enduro 2 back in the, a couple of years ago.
Ah, so you know him, awesome.
Well, no is different.
Well,
but, I ran
you've
into
met him. Okay. And he was sponsored from a bike company, and he gave me his bike. He said, like, Arno, you need to try this full suspension bike. And I haven't ridden this full suspension bike until then. I think it was 2015, and I think it was the Uetliberg Trail. I did that one.
Okay.
And I went down there. And first of all, I was really scared. I was like, oh my God. But then, on the second thought, I was like, oh my God, the bike is so capable as well. And ignited something in me. I was like, hey, I remember I had so much fun back in the days on smaller tracks. And we went down the Uetliberg Trail, and I had to go up. I lived at Rosengarten, somewhere there. And I remember I was so tired because I was lifting very heavy the previous day or even the same day. And I had a big cramp. I had to jump off the bike. And I mean, just for the little uphill, I was so ashamed. And there was a chair next to the street, and I had to sit down on the chair, and it was so funny. But that was an experience. And then right from that time on, it became really intense, and I bought the bike from my brother. It was a Rocky Mountain Altitude. It was my first bike. Yeah, I had a lot of fun with it, and then the rest is history.
Nice. Bryson, you can talk to the cramping. What pops into your mind?
Basically, welcome to the circle of the golden cramp.
Okay.
We love our cramp stories here on Skids and Giggles podcast. I mean, I've also had like massive cramp stories, so I won't go over them. But that's really, I'm enthused to hear about yours. But I also rode a 2015 vintage Rocky Mountain Altitude. So that's
really?
Cool. Yeah.
Awesome.
I had a red one. It was really nice.
The green one. Yeah.
Just the topic on cramp though, like I'm not a research professional, but I've done a lot of reading and spoken to quite a bit of people, and just kind of like, there's no cure for that, huh? What's your take on that?
Well, usually a cramp happens when a couple of things are happening, like dehydration is one, lack of electrolytes, but also overuse of the muscle, like a weak muscle cramps more. And any other issues, like for example, my wife, she had a lot of cramps back in her day. She broke her back and her hip pretty bad. Like she had a skiing career. And she had to stop skiing because it was a pretty bad injury. And for the following years, she always had cramps in her foot because of neural dysfunction. So this can also be something. And it depends. So, but with most people, I guess it's dehydration, electrolytes, and a weak muscle. Mm-hmm. A combination of these.
Yeah, I also found that if I had a decent amount of rest the day before, let's say, of the effort, it also really assisted me. I mean, just in general, getting a very good rest assists you kind of like on all levels, mentally,
Yeah, that's a good point. Like fatigue is another one. Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm. And that's kind of the practice I take in my daily life now. I think that also runs into the theme of this prevention. It's like when you do have a good rest, or in a way, it's a recovery. You allow yourself a little bit more headway or headroom to take on the next series of events that you're going to be going into, whether it's purposefully or not, which allows you to prevent getting to that point right to the red line where you're like in the injury zone basically. So that's kind of like the overall stance I take now, especially with what happened with my leg. It's really right in the foreground. Like, what do I need to do to make sure what I want to do tomorrow is not, I'm not prevented from doing these kinds of things. Because I don't have, like, a structured plan, like, anything professionally written down or anything, but kind of taking on this mentality of, like, I'm going to try to do, like, everything, like, maybe 1% better. Just kind of, like, walk a little bit more or drink a little bit more in the morning or, always maybe get another rep in or even another set if I'm trying to do some kind of particular exercise. Maybe not every day, but hopefully it aids my recovery.
Yeah, I mean, the aspect of recovery is actually very, very important, especially with people who are doing already a lot of things, and especially athletes. Like, what back in the day, what set us apart, like, we would always be asked by other people, why should an athlete who is already in a system like Swiss ski or ice hockey, or they are in a team, why should they go to you guys? They have everything there. But what usually sets us apart is because, at least back in the day, and it gets better now, the training program was not individualized enough. It was more, the whole team does the same thing, right? And what sets us apart back in the day was like that we individualized, and our experience in programming, and I'm not just talking about me, I had a really good team as well. We programmed, well, first of all, we programmed, but at the same time there was a lot of auto-regulation. Auto-regulation meaning we had a program, but it was not set in stone. So we also sometimes did subjective, like, questionnaires, like wellness questionnaire, like how do you feel, how much hours did you sleep, etc. So we get an overview of how they are feeling on that particular day. And at the same time, we would also do performance tests, like velocity-based things. Like, I don't know if you heard velocity-based training with, you can measure speeds. And we would look at, like, we had a baseline for them, more or less. And if it would be a drop-off of more than 10%, we would say, okay, today we're not doing anything neuromuscular, very like high central nervous system output training. That would be jumps, heavy lifts, etc. Because it would impair, first of all, if you want to push your limits, like if you want to jump further, if you want to lift heavier, it's very important that you're fresh, so you can push the limits. And if you're not fresh, you actually impede recovery, and we just wait another day. We do other things. We do maybe aerobic conditioning or mobility, maybe some type of bodybuilding training, and stuff like this is very crucial for the athlete, but also I think for the average person who is very motivated, just to organize it well. And usually with people, like gym training, like when I coach normal people, I always tell them that consistency is key. Consistency is number one. If the intensity is too high, and you can keep it up for a couple of weeks, but then drop off of that intensity, you will actually decrease performance, and the likelihood of injury will increase. And also, you will not, because you're demotivated, because you can't keep it up, you will not follow it for the next. For these people, really important that they keep doing it for the next couple of years. So if you think in terms of years, you need to find a schedule that you can execute for the next couple of years. So I always say do less, but do it always. So that's a really crucial point here. And even with the athletes, it's like that. Especially athletes who are doing skill sports, like mountain biking, especially enduro and downhill, is so much skill. And if we as strength and conditioning coaches or performance coaches think that we can make them very successful because of us, we're so stupid. That's not true. What they need to be really good at is in mountain biking, and you see that a lot of times. Like, I would even go down the road to say that Jackson Goldstone, he doesn't do much gym training back in the day, or I don't know if he did any at all. He didn't do much. He was spending so much time on his bike, that I know because I listened to a podcast with him, and he worked so much on his skill, and that's why he's so good. Now, of course, on the top couple of percents to get really to be absolutely at the top of world class, which he already is, but not quite there. Like he still has potential to win the overall, for example. I guess his physicality, that's where he lacks the most. And you see that with some injuries he had already, or with consistency. I mean, the more fitter you are, if you look at Loic Bruni, he's quite a strong guy, I would say. And he's really composed. His physicality is really good. And I think that's what makes the difference. I'm not saying it's not important, the whole strength and conditioning part. It's a puzzle piece. But especially in skill sports, for me, it's more important that the athlete is healthy and that they can perform well doing their sport. And if I have to skip a gym day for him to be fresh on the bike, doing skill training or skiing or ice hockey, whatever, that's for me the higher priority than giving him another gym session. Okay, but I have to say this also works only with people who are already motivated, because the lazy ones, this is already an excuse for them to not do any extra, right? So you have to find you have to be really honest in this kind of work or training relationship.
But I guess you have the benefit that, you know, people that want to work with you, that's kind of a self-selection of people that are generally motivated to do stuff. Certainly
Yeah.
In my experience with average Joes in that sense, is kind of like you almost need to slow them down, because as you say, right, recovery and taking the time to process and to, you know, this entire concept of supercompensation, so you stress and then you rest and then you get better, that it needs time and discipline. And what sets the average Joe apart from a Loic Bruni or a Jackson Goldstone even, or any other high performance athlete, is high performance athlete, they also recover like high performance athletes. So they can sleep 10 hours a night if they have to. They have top-notch nutrition, they have all the physio, they have all the tools and time available to just focus on this one thing, whereas average Joe has, or Jane has, you know, jobs they need to look after. They probably have kids, they have a household, they have partners, they have friends, they have all the rest of it. And that's why the discipline and consistency is so key.
Absolutely, yeah.
Not only that, they don't have those key messages like very present. Like maybe they don't have a connection like Arno that says like the biggest factor is consistency. You know, they don't know that. They think, oh, if I just go once in a while, maybe it works. Like maybe they don't have that information. And it brings me to another point I wanted to make was I also didn't have this information. Like I grew up doing sports, basically, yeah, like I've always done soccer or football, you want to call it. Rugby, played basketball, now cycling. I've cycling for a long time, but it was never this idea, like I didn't really have this general fitness idea about nutrition or recovery. It's just like, hey, when I have a chance to go do something, I go do it. And it's only now that I look back on some time when I realized that kind of those ideas were brought to me, but I didn't really like latch onto them, thinking that that's part of what I need to be doing. It's quite present now, but I also always was of the opinion that doing various things was also a benefit. So I was doing a lot of yoga and stretching, like very consciously. I was always trying to do more than one sport just because I had an interest in it, but also I knew that it would bring me a little bit to, like, I experienced that. So I did quite a bit of like BMXing alongside my mountain biking, and people would comment on like, oh wow, you're very precise, or things like this. And I'm like, well, I guess it comes from having to handle the BMX. It's a very sharp bike. You don't have suspension on it, and you have to be more fluid or smooth, or using your body language and the way you manipulate your arms and legs to kind of cushion some of those blows. And that translates to the mountain bike as well. And one thing I wanted to bring up, and maybe if you want to dive into the parapsychological side, is after I got my injury, I had quite a bit of people, I don't know whether it was like an underlying joke or maybe they just were being honest with me. They're like, yeah, maybe you shouldn't play basketball. Maybe you shouldn't do those things that cause that injury. And I thought, well, like actually I was playing basketball like way before I started cycling. So I'm not sure like that's the right answer, but it got into my head and I thought, yeah, I mean, maybe it could be the answer is why I got injured, or like what I should be doing and what I should not be doing. Can you give me your impression or your, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think you should absolutely be able to play basketball. That's 100% for sure. But the emphasis is on being able to. I heard in your conversation with Dave that you haven't played for a while anymore. Is that right? Correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I just started playing like in the last kind of year, on and off. Let's say like every 2 weeks or every week.
Right.
Randomly.
So you're spending the most time of the on cycling, like
overall from all sports. Yeah, cycling the most. Yeah.
And how much would you do running based sports like running, jogging, football, or anything like that?
Not a lot. No, it's been inconsistent, sporadic, random, on and off. Okay, might go for like a 5 or 10K every other month or something like that. Okay. I used to play a lot of field sports, so I was running probably racking up 20, 30K per week. But
because what we are looking at is, especially if you look at the ankle, knee, and hip joints and the surrounding soft tissue, it takes quite a while until they adapted to the stimulus. So actually the second longest, if you look at the whole apparatus of muscle, tendons, ligaments, fascia, and then cartilage, which is the longest, or cartilage and bone, which takes for sure a year to adapt to a certain stimulus, if not more years. But with the others, it takes a couple of months. So if you are not doing a lot of running-based drills, you actually have weaker soft tissue around your ankle, etc. So if you do a lot of cycling and then you do running sports, injuries can happen pretty quickly to those areas. Probably with you, it was a combination of muscular imbalance or even lack of strength, and also a lack of stiffness, we would call ankle stiffness. And back in the day, we would train, not back in the day, I still use it now. In the beginning of usually the off-season training, I would do a lot of stiffness work, like very specific. So it would be a lot of high repetition, low impact jumping in different variations, like side jumps, hops, but really a lot. Progressing, of course, over weeks. Because before we would get into really high intensity, high velocity jumping and sprinting, we would make sure that you have the stiffness in your ankles, and it takes a while. So this is a really good start in a training program to work on that. Obviously, not so much for cyclists, but still I would use it there because I want to do some explosive stuff with them, and I don't want them to get injured. And especially if you look at plyometrics, In German, it's called the Dehnungsverkürzungszyklus. I don't know how to say it in English. But basically, it's when you land, you store energy, elastic energy. And this elastic energy, in an ideal case, you can store it, and then you can push forward. Like imagine you would go for a dunk, okay? So you run up, and then you come with quite some speed, and then you start the jump, right? And you have a lot of elastic energy stored, like the pros. The pros they're able to do that. A lot of elastic energy, and this is actually like a spring, and it will push you to the, how do you say, to the
hoop,
to the basket. Basically, yeah.
But yeah, so I guess for context, plyometrics, what that category of exercises means is, for example, like a box jump, or jumping stairs,
Exactly.
or jumping off a box and then do a jumping jack afterwards, or something like that. So where you have that almost that spring loading and rebounding. So that's
exactly
what
the
plyometrics
rebound
means.
Exactly. Like a box jump where you do a counter movement is half of a plyometric. It's not like that would be like a good way to progress from like a static jump to counter movement, and then a box, and to do that on a box jump. But let's look at, for example, hurdle jumps. That's like the typical plyometric exercise. So I would definitely not start with hurdle jumps in the beginning.
No.
Because, and you can also see if you would record it, and you would see on slow motion that, for example, a lot of people, the knee collapse, they cannot absorb the forces. So you need some strength and also some, like these elastic components. The elastic meaning the tendons, like the Achilles tendon, is very, very important. So we know, for example, from basketball players, the really good ones, they have a high insertion point of the Achilles tendon. And these are usually the ones that they can jump the highest, because they have, the longer the tendon, the more elastic energy you can store. But it only works if this part is stiff enough and the muscle strong enough.
The theory of this stiffness training, I've actually never heard about. So I might have to do a consultation.
Yeah, we can for sure talk about it. And usually this stuff is I would always differentiate between what is fitness, like in the fitness industry, and then you don't hear stuff like that, right? This is really about
it doesn't look
sports
good on
science,
the
and exactly, right? It doesn't help you to look good on the beach. That's why nobody is doing it.
Yeah, but that's it, right? So again, I think there's also a very critical point we want to make here, is like, the difference between, fitness, as in I'm going to the gym and I want to look good naked, versus being a functionally strong human that can do difficult things like carrying heavy stuff, jumping up some stairs, carrying your kids around, ride a bicycle, which is obviously not the greatest thing to do in terms of functional movements. But so just, getting back to, I think what the human was originally designed to be 10,000 years ago, which was to walk long distances, to carry heavy things from one camp to the next, and all these kind of things. And that generally doesn't look very fancy. It's just very basic movements. And I think that is really what we mean with functional strength.
Absolutely. A good point, Pascal. And I think the problem here is also that we detrained ourselves so much that we need to start to talk about stiffness, etc. If you would grow up in the wild, you would run and jump and carry so much that you don't need this kind of training, right? I think that's because of our Western lifestyles that we have to really focus on that. And of course, with high performance is something else. You want to have the maximum output, so even a greater output than someone who lives in the wild in very specific cases. So this is another story. But yeah, I think that's really crucial. And also, I wanted to talk about.
But I guess what, just as an input, while you think about what you wanted to say, is, look at your 2-year-old, right?
Yeah.
He, he runs, he jumps, he skips, he figures stuff out, he carries his toys around. So, I mean, it's like, if you think in terms of functional fitness, more like a toddler rather than gym bro, I think that would be helping you much more to become stronger overall than actually just lifting heavy weights or doing a bench presses until your arms fall off.
True. Although there is not, I mean, also to put this in context, I think it's great when people go to the gym because just
for sure
to work, just to work on muscle quality is so important for longevity. I think it's probably the most important next to cardiovascular output. But muscular fitness is, or just strength and having some muscles is really, really crucial if you age, if you want to age well. Yeah.
Because it's a direct driver of bone density. I mean, there's plenty of research that shows that if you put, it doesn't even need to be a lot, right? You just need to put some tension on the bone that maintains the muscle, the bone mass. Whereas if you don't do anything, it atrophies, and like any other muscle, right? So the bone itself is kind of a living organism as well, right?
And this is an interesting point. The best way actually to increase bone density is really intensive jumping. But to get there, so not for people who are listening, it doesn't mean now you go out and you don't have
jumping
any
off the roof.
exactly, or jump really hard, because then you get injured because you don't have the background, right? So for the background, you also need muscular strength before you can really jump hard, and muscular strength obviously helps as well with bone mineral density. Yeah.
So if I were to do a layman's summary, we have some kind of goal that we want to achieve for ourselves personally in terms of fitness or functional fitness. And then when we speak to a professional, they're able to outline, what the body needs to do to get there and where our bodies currently are in comparison, where they need support or development in order to start the steps to arrive at the goal.
Yeah.
So that's kind of... that just dawned on me, right? Like I love playing sports. I love being active and doing things. And I'm actually really a proponent of more of a functional fitness now that I understand what the definition is, because I don't want to just go to the gym to lift weights for just a reason. I don't have any motivation for that. It's more like I want to be able to walk a long way, or I want to be able to run a distance, like maybe in one of these, community events, or I want to be able to cycle a long time. I want to be able to do something that brings something to my life for some particular reason. And maybe there's a lot of people out there like that who have that drive, but don't necessarily understand the reason why they want to create some kind of functional fitness plan. And now it's really just, I've been enlightened. So thank you so much for that, Arno.
Yeah, you're welcome. And to also get back to your question, like, if you should play basketball, and I would also support that, do as many sports as you can. That's really awesome, because it's a lot of creating new neurons in the brain for new movements, etc. keeps you young and keeps you learning. So I think that's very good. But for all this, it's really helpful if you have good athletic level, like good base athletic ability. And functional training, which is the trendy term right now, can really help with that, because usually it's with a lot of free weights or with your body, and you have to stabilize a lot. So that's a good thing. But what would be even better, it would be something that is, individualized to you and what you actually need. And sometimes it's sitting on the machine and doing nothing that has nothing to do with the term functional training per se. But this is also something like functional training is a funny term, because everything is functional. It just depends on what you need, right? If I work with a lot of physios as well, I have a gym in Schwol. and we work with physio, and our gym is a functional training gym, right? We have a lot of stuff that will go under the term functional training, but I also invested in some machines because the physios, they cannot work. They need to work sometimes in very safe environment and very safe way, and very safe exercises. Exactly, and sometimes you need a leg press. Sometimes it's helpful to have a leg extension, etc. So it always depends on the context what you need, right? And yeah, and the danger. Sorry, this is also really important. The danger of functional training is actually that people get hurt. And you see that a lot with CrossFit, because CrossFit is part of functional training. So people come unprepared, they do it high rep, a movement they've never done before, and the probability that they get injured is quite high. The problem is also the education of the coaches, which you can get in a weekend, and sometimes this is not enough. I'm not saying this is in general. There are really good CrossFit boxes out there and good CrossFit coaches, and they know how to approach that. But there was also a trend in injuries because of overuse.
Well, I guess, just as a bracket remark, right? Just look at I follow CrossFit loosely, but if you look at the long-term successful athletes in CrossFit, they all come from Olympic lifting, where there is incredible discipline on the proper movements, proper technique, all that sort of stuff, and everyone else is just falling apart sometimes. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm not generalizing, but if you look at Tia Toomey, if you look at Matt Fraser,
totally,
all these guys are coming from a lifting background. So,
yeah.
You mentioned at the intro, you mentioned already mobility screening, and I think that segues nicely into actually assessing injury risk, or how do you look at a person that is in front of you and says, hey, I want to work on my functional capabilities. What kind of tools are you using? I've recently been introduced to a movement screen. Very big fan, very convinced. I've bought myself a kit. I'm not saying this is the best one, but I was really, really impressed with it. I was just curious what kind of systems you work with.
I think if you're talking about functional movement screen, that's I would say this is a really good entrance into assessment, because there is a lot of literature about that, and is very specific.
It's well researched.
Well researched, especially if you're a coach. If you have your education, etc., but you're still in the beginning of your coaching career, this is a really good way to be to get an idea about the mobility and the assessment. It was with us with elite training. We actually started to develop our own movement screening tests based on the sports. So hockey players had a different one. Skiers had a little bit different ones because they have different needs. And after a while, we actually didn't have any movement screen protocol. It started to happen that every coach had their own protocols, because with so much experience, you actually look at the person and you start with a couple, of course, with a couple of general ones, but then you go deeper with very individual tasks. I also have to thank to my wife. She's a sports physiotherapist and does a lot of assessment as well, so we talk quite a lot about it. And I also ask her, I will ask her a lot when I see something. Just recently we had a mountain biker. He said he would always turn his ankles, well, especially on the right side, and he thought there was a problem of the ankle, but if I looked at it with my wife, and we found that it was actually the hip.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was really interesting. Yeah, it was a quite weak hip rotators, mm-hmm. and so yeah, there we didn't have a specific protocol. We just looked at the ankle first, and then we saw, okay, there is a little issue. So we had a flat foot, and then we progressed. So to the knee, do we see anything there? To the hip, yeah, there was something. So let's look at more exercises for the hip, and then we found it out what the problem was. So, but the screening, I think, is really helpful, especially something like FMS, to get just to get the base idea. But then when you work with the athlete, I think you can do some retests, but after a while, I don't think it's necessary anymore, because you know the athlete so well and you work closely with the athlete, and then you adapt, right?
Absolutely. No, I thought it was interesting. So, I was at a training camp recently where I was introduced to the FMS, and it was the first time I did a screen like that, and this basically goes through lower quarter mobility, upper quarter mobility, so your arms, it looks into the balance. So it gives you a benchmark, and I think that is what the cool thing is, right? So especially if you look at the research into it, right, it's all about return to play. It's about assessing what is the mobility linked injury risk. So, right, so, you have a certain score, therefore the likelihood of you being injured again if you misstep, and I think that's a later point I want to make or discuss, is the risk of an injury is X%. And, I've had some injuries over the last 5-10 years, which I thought were taken care of. I've done a lot of physio, I've done a lot of gym work, done a lot of strengthening of said complexes. And I still, in this screen, could see precisely what the issue was and like how minimal the balances are. And so, namely, I had a dislocated shoulder. There's like a 5% mobility difference between my left arm and my right arm. I had a bone bruise in my left kneecap. There's a over 10% difference between my left and my right leg still, specifically in a pistol squat. So all of that sort of stuff, and that gives you, I think, a simple tool to not only assess yourself, but also measure progress, right? So now I got myself a kit that I use for myself.
Awesome.
So I can actually track, if I'm progressing back towards the baseline. And I think that is a great way, right? Because, of course, today we have all the tools of, let's talk about the measure itself. We have our HRVs, and we have our, scale with all the body metrics, and we have training load and this load and that load. And it's just another tool that you can use to assess, is there still work that needs to be done, and what kind of work, and where are the problems? Yeah, that's why I'm really interested in this.
Yeah, I mean that's what you just said. Where to work at? That's actually, I would say, the much harder part. Like, you have the screening now, but what are you going to do now? This is not so easy. Even for me, sometimes still not easy how to get the athlete to where I want him to be. And usually these kind of changes, especially mobility-wise, takes time. And takes time, but also a lot of repetitions. Like, a lot of doing it, usually like absolute minimum 3 times a week, and even more. Like, if I look at my progress, for example, like, I got way more flexible because I was stretching the last, I would say, 4 or 5 years pretty regularly. Before, I didn't do much stretching. But the progress during those 4 or 5 years was really slow. Like, it takes time. And also doing the right things. And also, this is another aspect. We don't need to be completely symmetrical and everything needs to be perfect. You should just be able to fulfill the tasks in a safe way, and that's the most important. So, for example, I injured my ankle on my left side. Not too bad, but I still feel it. I think it was 3 years ago, and I still feel it. That it's not the same left and right, but I don't have any issues at all doing anything. Like, I strengthen it so far, and it's that flexible that it's enough. But it's not the same as right. Okay, the right side. So, but the stability and the strength is there. It's completely fine. It's just in some certain cases, sometimes I feel it. Let's say mobility wise, or when I do deep squats, I feel a little difference. But this is really not. So getting it to perfect is the right mindset, but it's not always easy to achieve.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah,
for sure. But yeah, it's a tool.
yeah,
Especially, and the thing is, obviously what we're getting at is that, an injury is, yes, sometimes it's, blunt impact. A friend of mine just, yesterday snapped his collarbone by crashing into a tree in an enduro race. So yes, there is nothing that would have stopped you from breaking a collarbone, but a lot of the injuries can be, boiled down to a lack of mobility or a lack of flexibility, right?
Yeah.
And that's why I think that's the point I wanted to make, right? That's why measuring these things is a great way to assess if you're ready to go back at full speed. Are you ready to go back to play? And that's why I thought it was so interesting.
And even benchmark testing for explosive power and even for strength. Usually you have a return to play protocols there too. Like if your left and right leg strength is more than 10%, you're not ready to do the sport you want to do, for example. So I would also test that those areas as well, not just functional or mobility screening, but also some performance benchmarks as well. And also when you talk about impact, even with impact, like if you have a certain level of muscular fitness and strength, you can also decrease the likelihood of blunt force traumas, right? I experienced it myself. I was riding 3 years ago. I was actually guiding a group, which is even more stupid that I got injured there. But
guide doesn't crash. Simple rule.
Yeah, exactly.
Swiss cycling guide.
Yeah, this shouldn't, right? But there was a blind spot, and I jumped off of it, and I misjudged it completely, and I landed on rocks, like pure rocks, on the shoulder. And when I landed, I was like, okay, my shoulder, it must be completely destroyed. Like I couldn't move, and I was like, okay, now something is broken or a rupture. And it turned out only to be a TOSI one, so the clavicula would just be a little bit higher now.
Okay. Yeah.
So the ligament is a little bit overstretched. It wasn't too bad. And I mean, a lot of people saw the crash and they were like, oh my, I mean, I fell from like 1.5, 2 meters height and 4 or 5 meter distance into the rocks. Okay. It should have been a bigger injury. And I guess with my training, I could save some broken bones. I mean, it would be a typical collarbone, exactly.
Yeah.
A collarbone fracture.
Yeah, cyclist. Was it it's almost a ritual to have a collarbone.
I haven't had it yet so far, so I'm like. But of course,
Don't say it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm not going so far as I would say like my fitness saved me because there is also luck for sure, but you can definitely decrease damage.
You can also force some luck sometimes.
Yes, exactly.
if you can.
I mean, if I look at some enduro and downhill riders, they're so skinny. I'm like, if you fall, everything falls apart. Like
that's the thing with roadies, right? So
yes,
that's why I think a large part of the many bone breaks from roadies is not necessarily only due to crashing on tarmac. It's also, they're super light, very low muscle mass, restricted diets because roadies, therefore bone density like an 80-year-old, and It's really not that great. Anyway, I think we should wrap up with some actionable takeaways. So your recommendations for injury prevention. What would you say to our audience? What should they do apart from a consultation with you?
I would say something to Bryson. So can I ask you, so where are you right now at the moment? Like, can you already run? Can you already basically jump?
I can jump, yeah. I can do one-legged jumps, so alternating. I can jump backwards. I've gone over those with my physio, and he's cleared me to go, and he's basically given me a set of all these different dynamic movements that I should be doing until I see him next time. My doctor asked me if I'm running. I said no, not yet, because I basically was just following the advice of my physio, and we hadn't gotten to that point yet. It was actually the day before my consultation, so he then said, yeah, jog, run as you feel fit, and then try to progress from there. So I still haven't. I kind of shuffle at some points just to kind of, cross the street or get to a door before it closes or something like that, but I haven't gone on a conscious run or a jog. I am motivated to. I might try doing that today because yesterday I did a little bit of body weight exercises and a little bit of hops and things like that, kind of maybe what would be classified as functional movements. So maybe to counterbalance that, I will do a little bit of a jog or a run today. But does that answer the question? I think I'm capable. Yeah.
Okay. So I know it doesn't hurt you.
No, I haven't had pain since I took the cast off. Actually.
Ah, cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Very lucky.
And you do strength training right now?
Yeah, more of like a body weight, and I've done a little bit of kettlebell, very, very basic.
Okay.
A little bit of swing, a little bit of the overhead.
Right.
Don't know what the call is, but maybe also the row. Quite basic stuff.
So just from very far away, I would definitely look into the extensive jumps, like doing a circuit of different kind of jumps before you actually go running. So it just gave you confidence and to build up your stiffness. I would at least do this for 4 weeks if you can progress it with rounds and with repetitions. And then I would also like the goal would be the faraway goal. Like let's say in the next couple of months would be that you can really use plyometrics. First on both legs, but then on one leg, and to get there, because if you can do that, you will be very confident to play basketball again, and also other sports, stop and go sports. So the goal will be in the gym that you would have no difference left and right with the jumping power, and also that you're able to stabilize the ankle, the knee, and the hip joint properly aligned in a one-leg jump, left and right. But it sounds actually, sure, it's manageable quite easy. It takes some time, so you would have to work on ankle stiffness first, introduce some jumps. I would start there from static jumps, so not counter movement. So let's say like a static squat jump, just a basic static squat jump, for example. Like you go down, you wait a couple of seconds, and then you jump off. So no rebound. And then you do counter movement. And then you do counter movement on obstacles like a box or etc. And then you do it also one leg, the same story. You can actually combine it. You can do it in the same session. So you would start the first 2 or 3 weeks, you would do static jumps, both legs, one leg. And then go the next couple of weeks, you would go counter movement, and then you would start with little plyometrics, like really easy like maybe just from this height, jump off a little box and then jump on another box, stuff like that. And I would also do it not just back and forth, I would do it also laterally as well because of the stop and go. And really important at the same time, a strength training program, which focuses on bilateral but most important, unilateral strength. So meaning single leg squats. This is one of my favorites, but also pistols, single leg knee touches, etc. Actually, single leg knee touches, I can give you a video afterwards. What I mean is a really good exercise because you need to be able to align the leg to actually perform the exercise, and you need really good mobility in the ankle, knee and hip. It's not something you can do probably right now, but it's something you can try to get there. And really cool thing about the single leg knee touches, once you don't want to use too much weight, you can also do it at home and with little weights. Okay, but to make really good progress, I really recommend you not just working body weight. Because especially lower leg, it's really hard to get the right stimulus. After a while, you can start with body weight, no problem, but after a while, you need some weights. And you don't also here, consistency is key. So meaning you don't have to do too many exercises. If you have 3-4 maximum lower body exercises, 3-4, where you also use full range of motion. That's something really crucial, because full range of motion training will actually help stabilize your joint, and you will also get stronger in the lower angles of the joint. But to get there, you also need the mobility. So everything connects, right? But you should be able to do, like say, it would be great if you can do a pistol, just standing on the floor, a proper pistol squat, or actually a deep squat. Or, you have heard of the knee over toe guy?
I follow him, yeah.
Okay, so these kind of things are really good. But don't start just with those exercises because they are quite advanced.
Yeah.
But try to get there. Mm-hmm. These are really good stuff. Also strengthen your tibia muscle, your calf muscles in the full range of motion. I think that's going to be crucial as well. And also you can do, later on, you can also do it on unstable surfaces. Let's say on a cushion, because then you need more proprioception. It will help also with coordination and stability. And sounds like quite a lot, I know, but it's more about the progressions. Like, when are you doing what? That's always the key thing here. It's not, you don't do everything that I just said in the same workout or in the same week. So it's about progression. Choose 3 or 4 exercises. It doesn't need to go more than half an hour or 45 minutes. Maybe you have a warm-up before where you do mobility, where you work on flexibility, etc. And do this 2 or 3 times a week, and you will get very, very far. I promise. And you will feel very different. That's 100% for sure.
Oh, thanks for those tips. Yeah. I think as you're describing some of these functional movements, I had a flashback to when I was playing rugby regularly, and we would do like these just odd, simple training exercises that I thought, yeah, whatever, we're going here and squatting, then we move our feet a little bit, then we're running back and forth, and it's kind of like, what is this? How is this training us for rugby? And I mean, at the time, I had that question in the back of my mind, didn't really vocalize it because I was like, whatever. I have a trainer. We're all moving as a team. We're all doing the same exercise. We're all progressing. We all see it in each other. So it's kind of like, it's working. So we just keep doing these things. And now I realize everything that I did then actually helped my cycling progress after I stopped, because I had gained muscle mass, I'd gained mobility, I'd gained flexibility and strength in a large range of motion, because that was what we focused on. And we vocalized that. And since then, it's kind of just been shrinking and shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. And maybe that's what led to my injury. And as Dave said, it's kind of like that wake-up call, that message saying, hey, you need to do something because you were at a point where you could do that, and now you're not, and your body is telling you that.
I think you're very sportive and your skill level is quite high, But the problem is if your athletic ability declines and your skill is up there still, the risk of injury is like tenfold increase, right?
Yeah.
Because
I know I can do that, but
yes, exactly.
the body doesn't know that.
Right. And well, you might be able to do that for a couple of reps, but then fatigue sets in, weakness there, imbalance there, and they will get quickly to an injury.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Ask every cyclist that goes for their first run in the off season. They have the engine.
Double twisted
like,
ankles.
oh yeah,
Exactly.
10K no problem, 4 minute kilometer
But
pace.
they're absolutely destroyed afterwards.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's typical,
man.
and this would count as actually overuse injury because
absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, so let me summarize. So we said a pretty basic strength routine for injury prevention. Pretty basic strength routine focused on big compound movements. Big compound movements, we mean not isolated muscle groups. We mean something like a deadlift, something like overhead presses, rows, the classics. You can find those in any gym literature. We want to have exercises that focus on range of motion, and you want to be using full range of motion. You should be focusing on mobility and flexibility, and how do you do that is by the simple drills, introducing instability, as you mentioned, unilateral exercises, and all the other things. And if you have any questions, you should be consulting a professional like Arno.
Thanks. Something as well, like the jumping part is really crucial there as well. Like work on stiffness and work on your jumping ability. That's something. Yeah.
That's my key takeaway from this conversation. I need to work more on my jumping.
Yeah. Especially us as cyclists, like me, I don't do any running, very little running, some hiking. I really do a lot of jumping in the gym, so I still have the stiffness and the athletic ability to perform, like to have the output, to have the power output, to have neuromuscular output, because the firing rate, you can train it with maximum strength and with power and explosive movements. Yeah.
Last note, consistency.
Oh yeah, my favorite.
Because why? Consistency compounds consistently.
Yeah, true.
You have that tattooed on you somewhere, don't you?
Maybe
I got it.
I don't know if
Got
if
an invisible tattoo on my forehead.
Yeah, but this also means not just. This is also really important. Consistency means also to be able to consistency to happen. Is not just how many times I work per week. It's also what I do during the session and how intense I go. So for my own workouts, I rarely go to failure. So on some I do maybe 1 set or 2 sets per week in a certain muscle group where I go to failure, but rarely I do that because you get the same or almost, well, actually the same benefits. Was a recent study that came out that compared exactly these two, and the benefits were basically the same. You don't have to go to failure. You have to go to shy to failure, but it will significantly reduce fatigue. And this is also something, especially if you're a hybrid athlete, like hybrid meaning you do a lot of cardiovascular work and strength work. You don't have, in both areas, with submaximal training, you can get really far and reduce fatigue and increase consistency. So that was my last point.
Another pro tip. Right on.
Very good. All right. Well, we do have one final question that we use to close out the show, and I leave that to Bryson as always.
It's our classic. You might have heard of it if you've listened to a podcast. I know you have. So, Arno, in your professional, functional opinion, what makes a great skid?
I think, well, to be honest, I think if you can, how you call it again? If you can, so stupid.
You're thinking of a Scandi flick, aren't you?
Yeah.
Scandi.
Well, Scandi flick or the other one. The I want this so bad, but I cannot do it. Not yet. What's it called? When you hit the berm, like a brap, like
Yeah.
what's the
Schralping.
Schralping? That's it. I think that's the coolest thing ever.
Yeah,
they're explosive.
The mountain bike vernacular has a couple of really specific terms like brapping and schralping.
Yes. But hey, can you guys schralp?
By mistake, I've done it many times.
Exactly.
But how? So can you explain, Bryson? When you say by mistake, what happened there?
Yeah, like if it's like a really rough terrain, you're maybe coming in too hot and you don't have full control. And
Right.
then you lose balance front to rear for a moment,
Okay.
but you regain it. And
Yeah.
all of a sudden you notice you did this nasty schralp. And it's like your tires almost peeled off. You hit that berm. You held the line, thankfully.
Oh,
and you made some
so
kind
good.
of like the guy behind you be like, whoa. But you didn't do it on purpose.
Usually, as you can find on Instagram, there's an account called the Pressure Police.
Okay.
So, of course, low tire pressure helps with schralping.
Ah, really? Okay.
Yeah. And it obviously sounds great if you almost like rip the tire off and spray
Okay,
sealant
yes.
everywhere and everything. Yeah.
Also
But
dirt. If you can like spray some dirt, it just makes it spectacular.
This is something that the people who have done it, who can do it, they explained it to me. But for me, physically, it doesn't make sense so much because they say like you have to hit the berm at the apex, right? And then you're not using the rear brake, right? You only push your legs into the berm, but the people are saying you're not moving the hip to the side, so you're not giving a kick. If that is true, I'm like, how is just with moving your leg into the bike can make you schralp without moving the hip?
I'd say it's definitely a full-on topic for another episode, which we could do like maybe a round table
I
on.
will be in there as well.
We'll
please.
get some like guys like Grizzly and on and stuff like this. But basically, you're manipulating the bike in a way that it's not supposed to go, and you're losing grip and gaining grip, like just kind of like a drift in a drift car. And when with the angle of this bicycle, you're putting too much grip into the rear, but it at the same time will lose everything.
Yeah.
So it's gripping in and digging in and then ripping all the soil out.
But you have to. So you need quite some courage to do it. No?
Oh yeah, and speed. Oh,
and
yes.
speed,
Yeah.
because it on a certain moment when it skids, you don't have particular control over your bike, right? And that moment, I mean, in other terms, you can actually flip over too much, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so that's probably also something because sometimes
That's
I'm
all
hesitant.
the guys that crash into the inside of the berm.
Yeah. There's elements of two-wheel drift. There's elements of skid, and everything in between. Okay. It's really like one movement that does this flick kind of thing,
right?
And then instant grip again if you've successfully done it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
What's your favorite skid?
I mean, for sure, it's that.
It's
the Schralp. Yeah, I mean, when you watch like a Vital MTB and they just have like repeated guys hitting the same berm, like shit, and you're just like, I feel so sorry for these berms and these tires, but like, fuck, that looks so cool.
That looks so cool.
Yeah.
I remember Red Bull in Tasmania. What's it called? The Red Bull
Hardline
that they had in February. Hardline. Yeah, and some guys like Jackson, they were schralping some corners. Or like I think there was one specific corner that was ideal, and it looks so sick.
Yeah, but you can't really beat a real Scandi flick. I mean, that's just timeless.
Mm-hmm.
Timeless.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but with Scandi flick, you were using the rear brake a little bit.
Yeah,
you do.
Also
right?
front.
Yeah.
Unweighting the front, unweighting the rear.
You're basically lining up the bike in the different direction of the turn, and then you use the momentum to get the entire bike around.
Yeah. I'm working on that. It works on some times, but not all. But yeah, I'm getting there.
All right. While you're getting there and working towards getting there, If our listeners have questions about you specifically or any of the training recommendations you made, where can they find you?
Probably best would be either through my Instagram. It's at Arno Galmarini. Pretty simple. And through my website, I have two websites. So one from my gym, it's origym.ch. And the other one is questmtb.com, where you actually can also sign up for my coaching, and then we can talk or figure out if that would be something for the person. But you can always ask questions because I'm pretty open about. So my first goal is always to help people. That's
That's cool. Well, thank you for that. We put all of that information into the show notes as well, so our listeners can find it there. And with that, we say thank you very much. That was another epic recording, and I'm looking forward to see you in person sometime.
Yeah, that would be absolutely sick because I really enjoyed talking to you guys. You seem also very friendly and lovely. And we definitely have to hang out either on the bike or somewhere else. Also, please let me know if you come here up into the Engadine Valley. We can also organize a ride for sure. I would love to do that with you guys. And yeah.
Great to have you on, Arno.
Thanks for listening. We really hope you enjoyed this episode. Why don't you let us know what you think? We really like to hear from our listeners. To find out how to get in touch with us, follow the links to our website in the description or find us on Instagram under @skitsandgiggles. Until next time, Skigglers.